Hi! In the last part we talked about coordinates. And did you know... The coordinate system Blender uses is technically a Cartesian coordinate system. It was first thought up by René Descartes in the 17th century. The guy was a genius. His work in math and philosophy is critically praised even today. Anyway, back to Blender with our next part, viewing objects. Here comes the meat of this topic. So far, you haven't learned how to move the 3D view around to change your viewing angle of the cube or any of the other stuff, even though I've been shamelessly doing it myself. So how exactly do we move our view around to get a better look at our scene? Well, in Blender, moving your view is called navigation, title of this topic. It's accomplished almost completely with a combination of the middle mouse button and the numpad component of your keyboard. For this reason, I need to perform another preemptive strike. Using Blender without a mouse is nearly impossible, so if all you have is a trackpad, you really should invest in a USB mouse, even a cheap one. If you want to use Blender with more ease, go for a mouse with a scroll wheel that doubles as a middle mouse button. Finally, if you're using a laptop without a numpad, you can make do, but picking up an external numpad will make things way more pleasant. You'll see soon that Blender uses these accessories very heavily for basic navigation. If you have no other choice, Blender's View menu can do all the operations I discussed in this lesson, but is so much slower. You can also change many of the settings from the User Preferences editor in the Input section to adapt to a 2-button mouse or make up for a missing numpad. This is outside the scope of this lesson, however, so if you can't find the help on howtoblend.com, the user manual at blender.org is your buddy. To begin, we need to talk about something called projection type. Projection refers to the way distant objects appear in the 3D view. When you start up Blender, the default projection is called perspective projection. This is similar to how we see distance in real life. Distant objects appear smaller than close ones, and the angles of closer lines are narrower than of distant lines. Perspective projection is almost always what you'll use for your final image. Alternatively, there's orthographic projection. With orthographic projection, elements stay the same size regardless of their distance from each other. It's similar to how blueprints are drawn. This view is often better for creating the shape of an object since it's easier to judge the proportions. Now, you'll get used to switching between both types so you can be technically accurate with orthographic projection, but artistically competent using perspective projection. In Blender, it's easy to alternate between projection types like this. You can switch using the View menu in the 3D View's header, but the hotkey is so much faster and it's easy to remember too. Just place your cursor in the 3D View and tap the number 5 on your numpad. Note that pressing 5 on your keypad has a different function and won't affect projection. This is the same with all the number hotkeys. Numpad and keypad do different things. Now, when it comes to actual navigation, 3 operations are controlled with the middle mouse button: zooming, orbiting, and panning. Zooming is as easy as scrolling up and down with your mouse wheel. If you don't have a wheel on your mouse, you'll have to hold Control, press the middle mouse button, and move your mouse. Zooming brings your view closer to whatever is in the exact center of the viewport. Orbiting your view is accomplished by holding down the middle mouse button and dragging your mouse. Orbiting is inverted, meaning you pull down to rotate the view up, and you pull left to rotate the view right. It sounds weird, but it's actually very natural. Panning is what happens if you orbit while holding Shift. Panning causes the center of your viewport to change, so that if you zoom or orbit again, your new view will have a different focus point. Also, while dragging your mouse, it's okay to let the cursor go outside the editor. It will automatically be looped to the other side, which enables you to continue uninterrupted. And that's pretty much all you need to know for the mouse side of things. Now, there are many times when you simply want a perfectly flush front or top-down view of your objects. This is called view snapping, and it will perfectly align the view to an axis you select. View snapping relies on the numpad, and in general, when you're trying to position objects precisely, the numpad is your go-to thing. Device? Peripheral? Whatever. Because we're going for accuracy now, we switch to orthographic projection by pressing numpad 5. If you want a front-facing view, the number 1 on the numpad will snap your view to the front. Numpad 3 will snap it to the right side, and numpad 7 will snap it to the top. You can snap to the back, left, or bottom angles by holding Ctrl and pressing 1, 3, or 7, respectively. Apart from the numpad snapping to views, it can also orbit incrementally. This causes the view to orbit 15 degrees at a time. Press numpad 4 for left orbit, numpad 6 for right, numpad 8 for top orbit, and numpad 2 for bottom. By the way, although we practiced separating the user interface into multiple 3D view editors, we hadn't yet obtained the skills to change the view until now. For that reason, I didn't mention how many artists prefer to arrange their layout to have 4 3D view editors open, each with a different view and projection type. It's also the standard layout for other 3D packages like 3D Studio Max. You can select this layout yourself in the View menu with the option Toggle Quad Layout. Doing so will restrict orbiting to only the perspective projection region of the layout. The other regions are locked to their snapped views. Using the quad layout is somewhat uncommon for Blender users since view snapping is super quick as you've seen, but to each his own, and you might appreciate this setup immensely. There are a few more numpad operations that will affect your view. Camera snapping is one of these. It will align the camera object to your view, or vice versa. To snap your view to the camera object, press numpad 0. The camera object is the view that your final image will use, so it's important to know how to check it quickly. If you'd rather have the camera snap to your current view, you can use another hotkey, Ctrl-Alt-Numpad 0. This is also quite useful since it means you don't have to move the camera along the axes like you do with normal objects to position it. Finally, we have Center View to Selected. This will cause your view to automatically zoom and pan to the selected objects or elements. This is performed with the hotkey numpad period. It's a quick and easy way to focus your view directly on an object without panning and zooming to it yourself.
Now, if you're not inspired by that, you just aren't a champion. Your task this time is to set up a quad view layout. Before starting this challenge, just try messing around with the numpad and middle mouse button to get a feel for things. Then, split the 3D view editor into 4 copies with 4 different viewing angles. With orthographic projection, there should be a side view. Remember, you can hide the subregions by dragging the frames. A front view, and a top view. The last view should be perspective projection, and I want you to change the orbit, zoom in, and pan the perspective view to match the image here. Finally, save the layout with any name you like. As usual, proceed to the next parts when you are finished.